This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best and easiest way to create a beautiful and unique website. I'll talk about them a bit more later, but first let's talk about the plans that could see the UK build a whole new megaregion. These plans have come about because, in recent years, the economy of the United Kingdom has been struggling to achieve significant economic growth. In fact, the GDP of the country isn't really much higher than it was back before the global financial crisis of 2008. This continued economic stagnation is dragging down the standard of living experienced by the British public, and as a result has left the British government scrambling to find ways to jumpstart new economic growth. So far, the current government has proposed a few potential solutions, including streamlined planning processes, a new runway at Heathrow, and various reductions in regulation. However, the solution I think would be the most ambitious, and also the one that I think could be the most impactful, would see the creation of entirely new cities, and a whole new mega-region centered around Oxford and Cambridge. This plan would harness these cities' strengths in science and technology to create a new tech-focused growth hub that's been dubbed the Silicon Valley of Europe. But in order to achieve this very ambitious goal, these cities and the areas between them are going to need significant amounts of new development and infrastructure. Something that's already at least partially underway with things like the East-West Rail project that will see a direct rail line built between the two cities. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at how these plans could transform the region, how key infrastructure projects like East-West Rail are going to play a role in this, and what this all could mean for the British economy. Hi all, I'm City Moose and I make videos about urbanism and transport, so if that sort of thing interests you, consider subscribing. I also have a Ko-fi if you want to support the channel, it is always appreciated. But back to the plans for this new mega-region, and one of the first questions you might ask is why would building new cities here in particular have such potential to create economic growth? Well, in the last decade, one of the leading drivers of economic growth in overseas economies like the US and China has been the tech industry. But looking at this map, we can see how Europe has kind of struggled to capitalize on it. The UK is hoping to change that by setting themselves up as a major tech hub, which in turn they hope will bring them the economic growth these tech hubs have been able to bring to other countries. Now, when choosing where these tech hubs should be built, it makes sense to look at other tech hubs around the world, and of course the most successful tech hub is Silicon Valley. There are a number of reasons credited for Silicon Valley achieving the success it did. But one of the main ones is its proximity to major world-leading research and educational institutions like Stanford University and the University of California at Berkeley. These institutions employ field-leading researchers, output highly skilled graduates, and generate huge amounts of studies and innovation, all of which creates an environment that's ripe for the setting up of new cutting-edge tech businesses. Now, similarly, Oxford and Cambridge are home to some of the most prestigious universities in the world. Currently, Times Higher Education ranks Oxford as the best university in the world, with Cambridge not far behind in 5th place. Oxford and Cambridge also perform extremely well when it comes to creating new patents. The Global Innovation Index rated Cambridge as the number 1 and Oxford as the number 3 science and innovation clusters in the world. For a point of comparison, Silicon Valley and San Francisco came in at number 2. But clearly, unlike Silicon Valley, these cities have not been quite as effective at turning this massive output of patents and research into new businesses and economic growth. Another reason often credited for the success of Silicon Valley is the area's easy access to venture capital, and both Cambridge and Oxford are only around an hour and a half away from London each, a city often ranked as the world's top global financial centre. So, with their cultures of innovation, high-quality universities, and easy access to the biggest financial centre in the world, I think we can start to see why Oxford and Cambridge have a lot of potential to become huge centres for economic growth. Especially now with the advent of artificial intelligence, we are seeing a surge in innovation and new tech businesses forming, and the UK government wants to position the country to take advantage of the growth this could provide. AI has considerable potential to boost productivity by making once slow and cumbersome tasks much faster and easier. For example, you might think creating your own custom website would take a long time, but ever since Squarespace released their AI-powered design intelligence tool, it's now become possible to go from an idea to a unique and beautiful website in just a couple of minutes. I've recently been building my own website, and with Squarespace all I had to do was answer a couple of short questions about my idea, and the AI created a custom website template for me in just a few minutes that fits my unique use case and brand. From there, Squarespace's design tools made it easy to further customize my site to my liking, and if you're somebody who wants search engine optimization, the AI tools can help with that too, quickly generating descriptions that can let your site get discovered faster. Now, if you want to give Squarespace a try, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/citymoose and use the code CityMoose to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. But now, back to the plans to turn the Oxford to Cambridge corridor into Europe's Silicon Valley. As I've already mentioned, the area already has a lot of the right ingredients to become a major tech hub. So why hasn't it happened yet? Well, one of the first reasons is infrastructure. If the area is going to be successful, it's going to need to be well connected. The government's plans have set their sights on more than just Oxford and Cambridge, and the plan is to turn the whole area between the two cities, often referred to as the OxCam arc, into a science and tech focused megaregion. Currently though, getting between the towns and cities in this region is not terribly efficient. Even getting from Oxford to Cambridge takes over 2.5 hours by public transport, and requires getting a train all the way into central London and back out again. To fix this, construction has already gotten underway on East-West Rail, a project that will see a direct rail connection built between Oxford and Cambridge, as well as various towns and cities in between. Now, historically, a direct rail link between these cities did actually exist, but large parts of it were closed around the 1960s. This project will see a lot of this old alignment brought back to life, along with various infrastructure upgrades. The line will start at Oxford Station, which offers interchanges with Chiltern Railways, GWR and cross-country services, and then runs up to Oxford Parkway before reaching Bicester Village, both of which provide interchanges with Chiltern Railways. These are all existing stations and track, but after Bicester Village, the line runs onto an old abandoned railway alignment to run to a new station at Winslow before reaching Bletchley, where it rejoins an existing operating railway and offers interchanges with the West Midlands Railway. At Bletchley, the line will also branch northwards to connect to Milton Keynes, and there is even potential for a branch towards Aylesbury, although that branch is yet to be funded. So far, this represents the first stage of the line. The next stage will then see the line run along an existing railway to a number of existing stations, including Fenny Stratford, Bow Brickhill, Woburn Sands, Aspley Guys, Ridgemont, Lidlington, Millbrook, Stewartby, Kempston Hardwick, and finally Bedford, where it will provide interchanges with the East Midlands and West Midlands Railways as well as Thameslink. This second section of the line will also see that existing railway track get a number of upgrades, but after Bedford, the third stage of the line begins, where it once again runs onto new track for new stations at Tempsford, Camborne and Cambridge South before reaching the existing station of Cambridge, with the Cambridge stations providing interchanges with Thameslink, Cross Country, Greater Anglia and Great Northern services. I won't go into too much more detail about this line here, but if you want to know more, I'd suggest checking out Jeff Marshall's recent video on the topic, where he talks about things like the likely stopping patterns as well as operating frequencies. I'll put a link to it in the description. Regardless, I think the station at Tempsford could be quite interesting. At the moment, Tempsford is a small village with a population of around 600 people, but it sits along the East Coast Main Line, one of the most important railways in the country, which links London and the South East with key destinations in the UK's north, including Leeds and Edinburgh. This prime position on the intersection of both a major north-south and a new major east-west railway has led to calls for sleepy little Tempsford to become one of the UK's next major cities, with some groups suggesting it could house as many as 350,000 people. Which does bring me to another major challenge faced by the Oxford to Cambridge corridor: housing and development. At the moment, Oxford and Cambridge have populations of around 160,000 and 145,000 respectively, so both cities are actually quite small. For this corridor to be successful, however, both cities and the areas in between them are going to need to grow so that they can accommodate the new workers and businesses they will hopefully attract. This ability to grow, however, has been pretty constrained by the UK's quite limiting planning regulations, their green belts, and various NIMBY groups that oppose any sorts of development. This has led ultimately to the area suffering from a major housing shortage, which has in turn resulted in Oxford and Cambridge becoming the two most expensive cities for housing in the UK outside of London. This shortage of housing and its high costs prevents workers from moving to the area, limiting the skills pool for potential businesses, which then also struggle to find spaces for their facilities. Projects like East-West Rail and building out new communities along the line at places like Tempsford will help with this by providing fast rail access to Oxford and Cambridge to large numbers of new people and areas. However, I don't just think building out new commuter towns will be enough, and Oxford and Cambridge are going to need to see their populations grow as well. Ideally, this would mostly come from more density, but with the level of population growth we're talking about, this will likely need some greenfield development as well. Now, the government hasn't fully released their plans for these cities just yet, but a recent report released by the previous government's former housing czar has called for the creation of a Greater Cambridge, that would build new neighbourhoods in the city's south, west, and east, as well as new major parklands. So the city would be able to accommodate over 200,000 new homes. To help connect these neighbourhoods, this proposal also calls for the construction of various bike lanes, a few new train stations along existing rail lines, as well as multiple new tram lines, with lines running to the northwest, south, and southeast, as well as an orbital line linking them all up. The proposal projects the cost of building these tram lines, if based on the cost of recent tram projects in Edinburgh, would be around £1.8 billion. Now, again, these specific plans are not actually from the government, but I do think the government should take note as they present a solid idea for how cities like Cambridge can be grown in an effective and sustainable manner. The public transport plans included are especially important as both Oxford and Cambridge will need better transit if they're going to support these larger populations. On top of all of this, there are also a few other initiatives planned to support the growing population of the corridor, including 9 new reservoirs that will need to be built to provide it with enough water, various road upgrades including upgrades to the A428 to further improve the corridor's connectivity, as well as funding for various innovation hubs. That said, there are a few other things I think the government should be considering as well, namely around energy. Power prices in the UK are pretty high, and if they aren't lowered, they may turn away energy-intensive tech businesses, especially AI-related ones that are notoriously power-hungry. And while I usually favour rail projects over road ones, from an economic perspective, roads have a role to play, and further improvements to the road connections along this corridor would likely be useful. Ultimately though, in my view, the Oxford to Cambridge corridor holds a lot of potential for new urban environments that could provide a real and much needed source of growth for the British economy. Up until this point, the UK has not been making the most of the fact that it's home to some of the best research institutions in the world. As The Economist put it in an article they published on the topic, the plan, dubbed the Oxford to Cambridge Arc, is not a new one, but it is a good one, because it correctly identifies what Britain does well and what holds the country back. These universities are constantly producing new patents and highly skilled workers. However, the limitations of their respective cities mean they are struggling to take advantage of this in the way that places like Silicon Valley have been able to. But hopefully, by allowing Oxford and Cambridge to grow and develop, by investing in other communities along the corridor between them, and by having these all connected up with high quality transport links like East-West Rail, we could see this begin to change, and the area become a major source of growth that would benefit the entire United Kingdom. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you really liked it, you could consider supporting me on Ko-fi, it is always appreciated. But, as always, I'm Kyle, aka City Moose, and thanks for watching.